Only by seeking the joy of our partner and trusting our partner to do the same does sex really work. It is lesson one in the pattern of trust, risk, mutuality, and generosity that underpin the whole of the Christian life. Sex that is all about me, and all manner of hidden neediness and ego propping is dysfunctional, as are the relationships that are based upon similar issues. This is not me standing from the outside and pointing a finger. This is me speaking from my own personal experience as well. Now, sex can be fabulous without ever blossoming into Hollywood love affairs. And it can teach us something of our ability to give joy to others, even when it's brief and it's humble in its circumstances. It doesn't require four-poster beds or rose petals to leave us feeling more than we were before it. It can be, even when entirely casual, a means for grace. Our big problem comes when we leave God at the door of the places that we go to seek this sexual fulfillment. God wants in. God wants to be a part of our lives, all of our lives, and we need to remember that it's not our childhood pastor or our mother that we are taking into ourselves. It's God, the same God that created the bits and pieces that we were so interested in to begin with. The whole messy, comical, and I say comical because I think societies that haven't really seriously looked at what desire is have no sense that sex is comical. The whole business of sex and sexuality can be extremely comical. You know, the better we are able to laugh at ourselves, maybe the more maturity we've gained in this area. The pornographer and the scientist who will tell you how to have a better climax have very little understanding of the comical nature, the absurd nature of sex. Remember that this whole messy, scary process is not something we've made up. We have the necessary parts for a truly astonishing range of valid sexual expression. And we are frequently driven by forces beyond the rational desires and decisions we hope to make in the rest of our lives. I suspect that a lot of our brokenness about sex comes from our brokenness before God. Our failure to present ourselves to God and to one another as whole human beings, physical, sexual, emotional, spiritual, and not to see all those different elements as chess pieces being played off against each other in a great game with God on one side and the devil on the other. We can say all this, and we can seek the mountaintops we were talking about, and we can struggle for that maturity that seems to elude us at times, but we need, at the risk of our immortal soul, to underpin this entire conversation with that phrase again, there but for the grace of God go I. We can look to the mountaintops and we can even reach them ourselves without any need at all to despise or belittle those who are climbing behind us. And we need not despise our own journeys just because we started in places we no longer wish to be. It's all good in that without the start there would be no end. And without the valley there can be no mountain. And without risk there can be no joy. So let me finish with this, which is a paraphrased piece from that fount of all wisdom, Rowan Williams in The Body's Grace. Our discovery of sexual joy and a way of living that makes that joy accessible must involve the insecurity of it being utterly exposed and utterly unplanned. The experiences of misunderstandings and the gradual discovery that a given relationship is not really very joyful at all is only bearable because even though these things are painful, they still change us in ways that open the doors to future joy and more fruitful ways of achieving it. It is clear also that this discovery of joy means a lot more than just the facts of sexual intimacy and pleasure. I can only discover the body's grace by taking time, the time needed for mutual recognition that my partner and I are not simply passive tools of one another. Such things are learned within the context of a whole relationship of disagreements and cooperation. And the more time this takes, the greater the risk. There is more to expose to one another and the need to sustain the will to be formed by the perceptions of our partner. Properly understood, these long-term committed relationships are not a way of avoiding risk and seeking security. They're not about comfort. They are about the creation of an environment where grace can abound, because there is a commitment not to run away from the perception of your partner, not to flee from the discovery that we're causing pain through our carelessness, or that we are perceived more truly by our lover than we dare perceive ourselves. The worst thing that we can do with the notion of sexual fidelity is to legalize it in such a way that it stands quite apart from the ventures and dangers of growth and is simply a public bond enforceable by religious sanction. When we bless sexual unions, we give them a life, a reality, not dependent on the thoughts and feelings of the people involved. We do this so that they may have a certain freedom to take time to mature and become as profoundly nurturing as they can. But if this blessing becomes a curse or an empty formality, it is both wicked and useless to hold up the sexuality of the canonically married heterosexual as absolute, exclusive, and ideal. In other words, I believe that the promise of faithfulness, the giving of unlimited time to each other, remains central for understanding the full resourcefulness and grace of sexual unions. I simply don't think we grasp all that was involved in the mutual transformation of sexually linked persons without the reality of unconditional public commitments. More perilous, more demanding, and more promising. Yet the realities of our experience in looking for such possibilities suggest pretty clearly that an absolute declaration that every sexual partnership must conform to that pattern of commitment, or else have the nature of sin and nothing else, is unreal and silly. People do discover a grace in encounters that are fraught with transitoriness and without much promising in any sense of the word. It may be just this that prompts them to want the fuller, longer exploration of the body's grace that faithfulness offers. Recognizing this, which is no more, to be honest, than recognizing the realities and the facts of a lot of people's lives, heterosexual or homosexual, in our society, ought to be something that we can do without generating anxieties about weakening or compromising the central significance of commitment and promise in our Christian understanding and moral imagining of what sexual bonding can be. I used to say that you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find your prince. And then I started enjoying kissing frogs more than being with a prince. Now, thankfully, after years of silliness, I have discovered that being with your prince makes frogs look very unattractive indeed.